Hare Krishna, Devki Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Swayam Shruti Prabhu.
So happy to have your darshan, Prabhu. So happy to have your darshan.
The feeling is very, very mutual, Prabhu. So nice to see you.
And my apologies, Prabhu. I couldn't call you for a long time.
No, don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm also guilty, Prabhu. It's been so much of a challenge, work
Yes,
and so
yes.
many other things are going on. I think we all face the same challenges.
But, thank you so much, Prabhu.
So nice. So happy to be part of this, and thank you for engaging me, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. So just give me a couple of minutes, Prabhu.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'll just put myself on mute.
Okay, fine. Hare Krishna, all the dear devotees. We are very fortunate to have His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu this morning to give us a Srimad Bhagavatam class. We all know his glories. He is a foremost disciple of His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj, and he has been practicing Krishna consciousness for almost 40 years. As I know that he started hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, studying Srimad Bhagavatam when he was a teenager around age 13. And it's really our fortune that he has taken the time from his busy schedule and enlighten us from Srimad Bhagavatam. So I would like to welcome him by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra 3 times, and then I will hand it over to you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Ram, Hare
Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare
Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare.
So Devakinandan Prabhu, you are welcome to start, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shruti Prabhu. Thank you to all the devotees in Abu Dhabi. Such an auspicious time for us to start for Kartik month, which is now just here. And I'm sure, in Abu Dhabi, you'll have so many wonderful programs where you will be able to speak about the glories of Kartik month and also to remember the wonderful glories of the pastimes of Lord Damodar with Mother Yashoda. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to take your association. The whole verse today on the third canto, 25th chapter, 25th verse is actually premised on the idea of association. So before we start, let us invoke the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Om Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyahasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta praeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So today let us look at the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Satam prasanga mama virya samvido Bhavanti hritkarnarasayana kathaha Tajoshanadashu apavargavadmani Shraddha ratir bhakti anukramishyati. Satam prasanga mama virya samvido bhavanti hridkarna rasayana kathaha tajoshanadashu apavargavatmani Shraddha-ratir-bhaktir-anukramishati. Satam prasanga mama virya samvido bhavanti hritkarna-rasayana kataha tajjoshanadashu apavargavatmani Shraddha-ratir-bhaktir-anukramishati. Satam, of pure devotees, Prasangat, through the association, Mama, my, Virya, wonderful activities, Samvidaha, by discussion of, Bhavanti, become, Rit, to the heart, Karna, to the ear, Rasa Ayanaha, pleasing, Kathaha, the stories, Tat, of that, Joshanat, by cultivation, Ashu, quickly, Apavarga, of liberation, Vadmani, on the path, Shraddha, firm faith, Ratihi, attraction, Bhaktihi, devotion, Anukramishyati, will follow in that order. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. Please hear the purport. The process of advancing in Krishna consciousness and devotional service is described here. The first point is that one must seek the association of persons who are Krishna conscious and who engage in devotional service. Without such association, one cannot make advancement. Simply by theoretical knowledge or study, one cannot make any appreciable advancement. One must give up the association of materialistic persons and seek the association of devotees, because without the association of devotees, one cannot understand the activities of the Lord. Generally, people are convinced of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Because they do not associate with devotees, they cannot understand that the Absolute Truth can be a person and have personal activities. This is a very difficult subject matter, and unless one has personal understanding of the Absolute Truth, there is no meaning to devotion. Service or devotion cannot be offered to anything impersonal. Service must be offered to a person. Non-devotees cannot appreciate Krishna consciousness by reading the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literature wherein the activities of the Lord are described. They think that these activities are fictional, manufactured stories, because spiritual life is not explained to them in the proper mood. To understand the personal activities of the Lord, one has to seek the association of devotees. And by such association, when one contemplates and tries to understand the transcendental activities of the Lord, the path to liberation is open and he is freed. One who has firm faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes fixed, and his attraction for association with the Lord and the devotees increases. Association with devotees means association with the Lord. The devotee who makes this association develops the consciousness for rendering service to the Lord, and then, being situated in the transcendental position of devotional service, he gradually becomes perfect. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve. So in this verse, Kapila Dev is instructing Devahuti on the glories of devotional service and association. In other words, she's instructing him on the science of he is instructing her on the science of sadhu sangha. And Kapila Dev is saying very nicely that association of devotees is fundamental component for devotional service. And if we want devotional service to take root in our hearts and for devotional service to grow after taking root, it is very important for us to take association. Once there is association, then all the other items follow. Anukramishati. That means all other items will follow in proper order. In other words, there is no point describing the other items until we get this fact right. And that's why Prabhupada starts his purport immediately by unequivocally stating that for us to advance in this process, it has to be that we must take association of devotees. Srila Prabhupada says that if we want to make advancement, then we must take association not just of anyone, but of persons who are Krishna conscious and who engage in devotional service. This is a very important point. And the key word that Prabhupada uses is towards the bottom part of the purport that you will read. The word that he uses is not to take association, but Prabhupada uses the word to seek. One must seek association. You will see that word there. And you will realize that the word seek implies that we must search for it. In other words, we must be eager. One who is seeking for something, it is understood that that person is seeking because the person has interest and the person is eager. So when we want to take association, that eagerness becomes a very important prerequisite in our hearts. Our Guru Maharaj told us that eagerness to seek association will also be manifested in our endeavor to seek association. So you have eagerness, which is E, and then you have endeavor, which is another E actually. And this endeavor is described in Bhagavatam. I think it's in the second canto, 8th chapter, I think maybe 5th verse, 285. Shranavata Shraddhya Nityam Granatascha Swa Chestitam. The word that is very important is Swa Chestitam. Swa Chestitam means your own endeavor. So when Prabhupada uses the word that we must seek out association, what he's telling us actually that there must be some endeavor from the devotee side. And we will never endeavor for association until we cultivate the eagerness to actually run after devotee association. That is very important. There must be some endeavor. There must be some labor. And association is not just going to come to us. This is the other point that Maharaj very often reminded us. We have to be proactive. We have to be dynamic. And we must seek out the association. It is not that the association will fall from the sky. Krishna reciprocates based on the endeavor of the devotee and the eagerness of the devotee. Eagerness and endeavor, they attract the mercy component of the Lord. And in fact, this eagerness and this endeavor also attracts the association of devotees. When sadhus see that we are endeavoring, when sadhus or other devotees see that we are eagerly seeking out association, they will naturally reciprocate with us, isn't it? But if we don't display this seeking mentality, this searching, then it is a very strong disqualification in our devotional service, actually. So, a very important point for us to understand is Prabhupada never uses any word in his purports in the translation accidentally. So, if he uses a word like seek, then it must be like, GPS system, where we seek out something, using a very, very straightforward and narrow path, actually. This is how we should run for association. The other point that's important in this shloka and also in the purport that Prabhupada gives us is why is association needed? This is a very important point. Sometimes, devotees take up Krishna consciousness, but after a while, they start having this idea that actually, I don't really need devotee association. I have Bhagavatam, I can sit at home, I can do my chanting and reading. Why do I need devotee association? But then Prabhupada also says in the purport that when we are alone and we are doing studies, for example, theoretical knowledge and self-study, this theoretical knowledge or anything that we do in terms of study, which is actually done by ourselves, it is there. No doubt it is there. But Prabhupada uses two words. We cannot make appreciable advancement without devotee association. This is very important. Appreciable means that there is no value and quality to our devotional service. What will happen is that on our own, when we do this ekanta bhakti, eventually, we will fall prey to our mental speculation. Bharat Maharaj was a good example in Srimad Bhagavatam. Even though he was such a great devotee and he had so much association as a king, even his family were devotees, he thought that he should renounce everything so that he could concentrate more deeper. He thought that his devotional service will appreciate in value when he went all the way to Pulaha Ashram in the Himalayas. But we know from the fifth canto that instead of his devotional service appreciating in value, it depreciated in value. Why? Because alone he became unnecessarily attached to not sadhu sangha, but he became attached to the deer sangha. And the deer was not devotee. The deer was a very young deer, like a child. And yet he took so much sangha of that deer. And his mind kept telling him that it's okay, This is also part of devotional service. So Prabhupada and our acharyas warn us, this is the problem with Ekanta Bhakti. Sometimes Maharaj used to tell us we leave the temple or association of devotees in a huff and a puff. Not because they are critical of us, but because we are critical of them. And we find some fault in them and we just cut off our sadhu sangha with them. And then we think that sitting at home, I become sadhu baba. But Prabhupada condemned that actually. Prabhupada said that our movement is really premised on sadhu sangha actually. So our senses, when left to the devices of the mind, will actually end up in what we call manogatan. And this manogatan means you take association of the mind. Mind's association is never sadhu sangha, Prabhus and Matajis. It is almost always asat sangha. So actually, the reason why we need devotee association is because devotees remind us of Krishna. Very important point. Whatever the devotees may be, just by seeing their tilak, we remember Krishna. Just by seeing, their dhoti and kantimala and kurta, we remember Krishna. Now, see, I'm speaking here, and all of you have no videos on, but I see Swayam Shruti Prabhu. So when I see him, I'm remembering Krishna. And behind him, I see a beautiful picture of Krishna. So I'm remembering Krishna. So just by seeing like this, and if he favors me with a smile, which he'll do right now, then what happens? The value for devotional service, the quality of my devotional service, the inspiration for my devotional service increases. It increases. And we are only doing this on WebEx, We're not even seeing each other. And yet we are so happy to see each other. What is devotional service if we cannot smile, if we cannot be happy? In Ekanta Bhakti, it is very difficult. It is very difficult. If you remember in Leela Mrita, there was one disciple of Prabhupada who was just sitting in some rice fields in Mayapur alone. He had built a hut and he was chanting 64 rounds a day. And all the other disciples came and told Prabhupada, this devotee is so serious, And Prabhupada just smiled, and he remarked the fact that, this is all nonsense actually. And true enough, after a few days, the devotee gave up that chanting because there was no association. So Bharat Maharaj is a very good example in Bhagavatam, and we should be very careful. Why? Because as Prabhupada says in the purport, this knowledge that we gain, if it is not channeled towards Krishna, if we just use our material senses to try and understand Krishna without the touch of devotees, what will happen is that we will actually be in touch with matter and not spirit. In the sixth canto, I think, fourth chapter, 29th verse, this point is very nicely given by Daksha actually. Daksha says in his prayers, the Hamsaguya prayers to Krishna, Yadya niruktam vachasa nirupitam diyakshabirva manasotayasya ma bhut swarupam gunarupam hi tatta savai gunapaya visharga lakshana. And this is a very nice verse. Guru Maharaj liked this verse very much. He told us, when he explained this verse to us, he told us that this verse tells us that if you don't have devotee association, then the material senses will cause havoc. Why? Then he explained 6.429. Anything that is expressed by the material vibrations. So when we use our tongue, but we don't have sadhu sangha, then what will happen is we will use our tongue in a material way. Anything ascertained by material intelligence. We have a brain, we have intelligence, but if the intelligence is not touched by Krishna and not touched by devotees, remain material. Anything expressed by the material senses, all the five senses, they are just gravitating towards objects of attachment. If the devotees are not there to give us sadhu sangha and turn us towards Krishna, we cannot sustain our attention to Krishna. And so what will happen is whatever material senses we have and experience remains material. And last point, anything concocted within the material mind. See, this is Manogatan, is expressed by Krishna to Arjuna in the second canto, second chapter, 54th verse. This is Manogatan. So it's very clear. Daksha says to Krishna, Krishna, anything that I use with my material vibrations, anything I try to ascertain with material intelligence, anything that I experience with material senses, and anything that I concoct within this material world, all of this is just the modes of material nature. And actually, ma bhut swarupam gunarupam hitatta. Ma bhut means it is not. It has nothing to do with the real nature of the Supreme Personality of God. Very important point. Very important. So that is why if we want to touch Brahmasparshanam, Krishna, we need the association of devotees. Otherwise, we will get the association of the mind. So Manaha Sangaha is not the one we want. We want Sadhu Sangha. Devotees of the Lord are very dear to Krishna. They are very dear because they have sacrificed so much for Krishna. I think it was in the 9th canto, right? 4th chapter. In that chapter, Krishna tells Durvasa Muni, how important and how dear these devotees are to him. So when we talk about Sadhu Sangha, the next thing we should understand is why are the devotees so important to us? Because they're important to Krishna. And Krishna says there, Ye Daradara Putrapta Pranam Vittam Mimam Param Hitva Mam Sharanam Yataha Katam Stam Styatyum Utsahe. In that 9th canto, 4th chapter, somewhere towards the later part of the verses, maybe 60th or 61, somewhere there, he says this very important point. He tells Durvasa Muni, these pure devotees, they have given up their homes, they've given up their families, they've given up their children, they've given up relatives, they've given up riches. They have given everything up and they have simplified their lives just to serve me. They have no desire for material improvement in their life. And then he says, Katam swam styaktvam utsahe. Utsahe means enthusiasm. How can I give up these devotees? In what mood can I give up these devotees? See, it's so important. And Krishna declares so nicely, Mayi nirbada hridaya sadavaha sarma samadarshanaha vashe kurvanti mam bhaktya sat striyaha sat patim yataha. He says after that verse, I think, he says just like chaste women, they know the art of bringing their gentle husbands under control. How? On the platform of service. In the same way, these pure devotees, these sadhus, they actually are equal to everyone. They're completely attached to Krishna. And because they are attached to Krishna, they bring him. Vashe kurvanti mam bhaktya. With their bhakti, they bring Krishna into their control. This is the greatness of devotees. That's why in Adi Purana also, very nicely, Krishna tells Arjuna, Adi Purana, Krishna tells Arjuna, Ye me bhakta jana partha, na me bhaktaschane janaha, mad bhakta nam cha ye bhaktas, te me bhakta tamamataha. Krishna tells Arjuna, Arjuna, those who are my direct devotees, they are actually not my devotees. This is surprising, isn't it? But those who are the devotees of my servants, they are factually my devotees. See, Krishna is telling Arjuna a very confidential secret. He's saying those who are actually my direct devotees, they are not actually my devotees. But those who are devotees of my devotees, they are my devotees. So I once asked Maharaj, if that's the case, right? You are a direct devotee of Krishna. What is this verse saying? Does it say that you're not actually Krishna's devotee? And Maharaj just put his palms like this and he said, who says I'm direct devotee to Krishna? I'm a disciple, right, of my spiritual master, who's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And Maharaj looked at me and said, in the spiritual kingdom, there are no direct devotees of Krishna. Because every devotee is a devotee of another devotee. Such a nice point. And that is why these devotees become pleasing to Krishna. In the Padma Purana also, I think Lord Shiva tells to Parvati Mata, Devi, Aradhanam Sarvesha Vishnur Aradhanam Param Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samarchanam. My dear Parvati, the Vedas may mention, that there is a worship of Devatas, but the worship of Vishnu is higher than that. But let me tell you one thing, even higher than the worship of Vishnu is the rendering of service to the Vaishnavas, who are always eternally related to Lord Vishnu. So this is the reason why 3:25:25 is there. Kapila Dev is telling that these pure devotees, they are the ones actually that are very, very dear to Krishna. And in their association, if you discuss the pastimes of Krishna, if you discuss the glories of Krishna, two things will come. Two things will come. When we discuss Krishna's pastimes in the association of sadhus, then we become very, very satisfied, and Krishna consciousness becomes very, very pleasing. So if we are not satisfied in our heart, and satisfaction is such a difficult thing in this material world, then we say we are taking up devotional service, but still we are not feeling satisfied. The satisfaction is not coming because we are not taking proper sadhu sangha. We are not taking proper sadhu sangha. And that is why we cannot relish Krishna consciousness. So this is a very important point for us to understand. These great devotees, they relish pastimes of Krishna. So if we are serving them, if we are in sadhu sangha of them, with their mercy, they may give us some relish. That is why Rupa Goswami mentions devotee association as touchstone. Touchstone. Anything that you touch with the touchstone turns into gold. So anyone who touches a devotee, their spiritual life just grows. It becomes inspiring. So it's very important for us to remember this. In the first canto, 13th chapter, 10th verse, 1:13:10. This point is also very nicely collaborated. If you remember, Yudhishthir Maharaj and the Pandavas, the Mahabharata war had finished, and so many people had been killed, and it was such a painful time at that time. And that day, Dhritarashtra was still staying in the palace, living, as if he was foolishly thinking he was king. But Yudhishthir Maharaj was so kind to Dhritarashtra that he just tolerated, and he allowed him to continue that way, isn't it? And then Vidura heard that his brother was still living off from the Pandavas. And he thought, let me come now and serve my brother. Let me give my brother sadhu sangha. And that's why Vidura came. He came for his brother, but if you read the 13th chapter, every day when Vidura was sitting down, he would just give sadhu sangha to Dhritarashtra. How? He would preach to him. He would preach and talk to him about Krishna. He would tell him about the frightful situation of death. That is also Krishna, isn't it? Sometimes someone asks Maharaj, why is it that so much of Bhagavatam talks about death and material life and how material life is so miserable? And Maharaj said, because that is also Krishna. Time is Krishna, death is Krishna, and fear of material life is also Krishna's mercy. Because otherwise we will just embrace spiritual material life all the time. So in 1:13:10, this point is very nicely, Yudhishthira Maharaj became so pleased because while he was preaching to Dhritarashtra, Vidura was not having a one-to-one session where he closed the door and preached. No. In fact, every day it was a sadhu sangha because all the Pandavas would sit down and they would also hear the preaching of Vidura to Dhritarashtra. This is sadhu sangha. You see, while he was talking specifically to his brother, others also benefited. The Pandavas, pure devotees of the Lord, they could easily have said, oh, Vidura has come for Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra's standard of devotional service is not up to the mark. Let Vidura sit down and preach to him. Do we need to hear what Vidura is saying? No, we don't need to hear because we are of a certain level now. We are all pure devotees, right? Why do we have to hear? But no, the mark of a pure devotee is that they are so eager to hear about Krishna. Pure devotees always want sadhu sangha. No pure devotee wants to remain alone. The mark of a pure devotee is that they want sadhu sangha. And so Yudhishthira Maharaj confirms this point in that particular verse. He says, what is it? Bhavad Vidha Bhagavatas, Tirtha Bhutaha Swayam Vivo, Tirti Kurvanti Tirtani. This is very important. Tirti Kurvanti Tirtani. Swantaha Stena Gadabritaha. Gadabritaha refers to Krishna. And so he says, my dear Vidura, devotees like your good self are actually holy places personified. You are Tirthas. You are the Tirthas. This is why we take sadhu sangha, because a pure devotee is a walking Tirtha. And then he says, why he's Tirtha? He says, because you carry the Supreme Personality of Godhead within your heart. So wherever you go, Tirtha Kurvanti Tirthani, you will turn that place into a place of pilgrimage. This is the beauty of sadhu sangha. We don't have to now travel because of COVID, cannot travel anyway. But where we are seated now, if we hear from Srila Prabhupada, if we discuss these wonderful pastimes of Krishna, if we remember the qualities of the great devotees, if we just sit down now after this class, Abu Dhabi devotees, discuss and gather and talk about Krishna, that is what 11310 is. Each of you are walking tirthas. Each of you carry Krishna in your heart, and therefore each of you are places of pilgrimage. This is the mood that makes us seek devotee association. If we don't have this firm faith that devotees are so powerful, we will not seek the association. That's why if you want to seek something, you must know its value, isn't it? Then you will seek it well. And that's why these sastric points are very important for us, because it convinces our mind and it convinces our heart. Prabhupada says in a very famous purport, it's in the 4th canto, 26 chapter, 12 verse, 4:26:12. Prabhupada says that if we want to become saintly persons, or if we want to return to our original Krishna consciousness, we must associate with sadhu. Sadhu means, Prabhupada says, bracket, saintly person. We must associate with Shastra, bracket, Vedic, authorized Vedic literatures. And we must associate with Guru, bracket, bona fide spiritual master. This is the process, full stop. It's such a clear point from His divine grace. In other words, association is not just association with a person. We must associate with a saintly person. But at the same time, the foundation of our association with the saintly person is actually Shastra. It is actually Shastra. It is not that you and I consider ourselves saintly persons and we talk about the latest release in the cinema. That's not Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha means Shastra is firmly in between us. And there must be a person to whom we have surrendered to, and that is Guru. Until we have Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru aligned, and we take association of all three, then Prabhupada says this is the process to become saintly persons, and this is the process to return to our Swabhava, which is our original Krishna consciousness. Very important. Prabhupada says in the purport that association is a personal matter. Because Krishna is intensely personal. He's the supreme personality of Godhead. Prabhupada condemns the idea that we should not have association because that is an impersonal idea actually. The impersonalist says, why should I associate with anyone? Because God himself is impersonal. Let me just merge into the void. In My Glorious Master, I think. Yeah, in My Glorious Master by Burijan Prabhu. One time Prabhupada was asked about what happens when the impersonalist merges into Brahmajyoti. Does he come back? Because Prabhupada had written in purports that he comes back. Prabhupada says almost all of them will come back. And so the devotees asked, if they go to Brahmajyoti, why should they come back? And it's a very difficult esoteric point. But Srila Prabhupada paused, thought about it, and then he said, because they get bored and they have nothing to do. Because there's no association. There's no association. So that's why Prabhupada emphatically states that devotional service implies that there must be activity, there must be personal relationships, and therefore devotional service is very, very practical because there must be engagement. Only when we are engaged in devotional service will our association with each other have value. If we are not engaged in spiritual activities, our association with each other will become gramya kata, or it will become bhutanam yanmitaha kalihi, social intercourse, which will end up in us becoming very disrupted and very disturbed. So then the next question we ask is, what do we do when we take association with each other? Is there a science of devotional service association? It is. It's the second shloka of the Chatu shloka of Bhagavad Gita. Very important. The first shloka establishes Krishna's supremacy as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The second shloka establishes how sadhu sangha should be carried out. How important a principle must it be then in devotional service if it becomes the focal point of the second of four seed verses in Bhagavad Gita? Just think about it. This is what Maharaj had highlighted to me actually. He said the first is about establishing Krishna. The second is about establishing how we should associate with each other. That is very important. Madchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So association begins with our thoughts. Our thoughts must always dwell in Krishna. That is why the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. And the word dwell is very significant because dwell means that you stay there for some time, isn't it? Now, for 1 hour, you all have to dwell where you are. You can't move. Dwell also means, you stay there. It is almost like sthane sthitaha. You become fixed. You wait there for a while. You linger. So the thoughts of my pure devotees don't zoom in and out. No, they dwell. Because their thoughts are dwelling on Krishna, this is the first step to become worthy of association. Then their lives become fully devoted to his service. The longer you dwell on Krishna, the longer you have Krishna's association, the longer you dwell in devotee association, the more your life becomes dedicated to Krishna's service. Very important. And these pure devotees, they also get satisfaction. They also get bliss. But how do they get it is very important. They get it by always enlightening and conversing about me. Who do they enlighten? They enlighten one another. Very nice point. So Vidura was seated talking to his brother. Pandavas were hearing eagerly. And they were becoming enlightened by Vidura. Later, before Vidura left the palace, Vidura engaged in wonderful conversations with the Pandavas. And they enlightened each other. Later, when Vidura went on pilgrimage and found Maitreya, he asked questions to Maitreya and they discussed Bhagavatam. So Bodhayantaha is how we take association. Bodhayantaha means we preach. To who? To each other. We cannot say, if one devotee wants to preach to me, Prabhu, you don't have to preach to me, I know this. No, that we don't do. We don't use the material term that people say, Prabhu, you're preaching to the converted. That means I already know everything, you don't have to tell me. No. If we want to take association, the starting point is humility. Without humility and without genuinely understanding that we are very far from Krishna still, we will never be able to do Bodhayantaha. Because preaching is always two ways. Preaching is always two ways. Because the word parasparam is there. Bodhayantaha is preaching. But how we preach is given as parasparam. Parasparam means among themselves. See the word? Among themselves. That means, it is mutual. It is going back and forth, back and forth. And among themselves, what are they doing? Kathayantaha, they're talking. They're talking. But what are they talking about? Not their kathas. They're talking about Krishna kathas. So this is how we understand what to do when we take association. Another very important reference to this shloka 10.9 is given in the purport of the 3rd canto, 29 chapter, 17th verse. In that purport, very important purport actually, when you have time, you should read it. Our Guru Maharaj liked that purport very much also, but the verse is also very important. Mahatam bahumanena deenanam anukampaya maitriya chaivatmatu yeshu yamena niyamena cha. So Kapila Dev is telling Devahuti Mata, the pure devotee executes devotional service by giving greatest respect to the spiritual master. You see, there is no devotee who's direct, isn't it? Even the pure devotee has a spiritual master. And not only do they give the greatest respect to spiritual master, but also to the acharyas. Acharyas means other devotees also. This devotee should be compassionate to the poor. You know what poor means? Prabhupada says poor means one who does not have Krishna consciousness, not no bank balance. In other words, we should be compassionate to share about Krishna consciousness to those who may not have it. And every devotee who is really genuinely humble will never claim to have Krishna consciousness. They will always claim genuinely that my claim is first because I'm most fallen. And then Kapila Dev tells Devahuti, such a pure devotee will make friendships with persons who are his equals. Very important. So when we are discussing with our God brothers, God sisters, and all those who are about our age and all, our mood should always be friendship. And we should always remember that they are all equal. We are all on this journey. So that's why we are actually equals. And then Kapila Dev says, all his activities should be regulated. In other words, it should be firmly fixed on Krishna. Now, in the purport, Prabhupada says a very important point. This is where it's important, how to take association. Prabhupada says, a devotee should make friendship with persons who are on an equal level with himself, or who have the same understanding that he does. This you can find out from practical experience. Prabhupada says, for a devotee, there's no point making friendships with ordinary persons. He should make friendships with other devotees. Why? So that by discussing amongst themselves, they may elevate one another on the path of spiritual understanding. Bodhayantaha parasparam. And you know what Prabhupada calls that exchange of preaching to each other? He calls it Ishta Goshti. That is Ishta Goshti. Today, when we talk about Ishta Goshti, normally it's because we have fought with each other. Management has to sit down between us and say, let's have an Ishta Goshti and let's discuss and settle our problems. But Prabhupada says, no. Ishta Goshti actually means that we create friendship, we put Krishna in the center, and we discuss amongst ourselves so that in this discussion, Krishna becomes pleased and he will elevate us. We will elevate one another on this path of spiritual understanding. Then Prabhupada, in the last paragraph of that purport, this is the key. Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita, there is reference to Bodhayantaha parasparam, discussing among themselves. And then Prabhupada says, generally, pure devotees utilize their valuable time in chanting and discussing various activities of Lord Krishna or Lord Chaitanya amongst themselves. So His Divine Grace is giving us a glimpse of what great devotees do when they have time. When they have time, they use their time in a valuable way. They chant and they discuss Krishna's activities. And then Prabhupada says there are Puranas, Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads. Two devotees should discuss them. That's why Prabhupada gave us Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And now Prabhupada says friendships should be cemented between persons with mutual interest and understanding. Mutual interest and understanding means like-mindedness. This is what Rupa Goswami also says in the Nectar of Instructions. That when we take association, we must take association and cement our association on the basis of friendship. But the friendship is with persons of mutual interest and understanding. And Prabhupada says such persons are known as Swajati. Swajati means we are of the same family. But Prabhupada also tells us a very practical point. He says that devotees should avoid a person whose character is not fixed in the standard understanding. In other words, a person who is not fixed in devotional service, even though he may be Vaishnava, Prabhupada says, even though he may be a devotee of Krishna, but if his character is not properly representative of a devotee, then we should just offer, mentally we should honor him. It is stated in Shastras that one can mentally honor someone who chants Hare Krishna, but we should avoid such association. We should avoid, because that association will become disturbing to us. So Prabhupada is very practical. He created the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but he also recognized that we are all of different persons of different mentalities. Some of us will be able to have more mutual understanding and interest as compared to others. So the point is, we should encourage those with mutual understanding and interest and get them to do sadhu sangha. And in that way, they elevate each other to become Krishna conscious. But if supposing we cannot possibly humanly, practically be able to have mutual understanding with everyone in the congregation. But we should accept that. Instead of fighting, we should accept it. Maharaj said, once you accept that, then sadhu sangha becomes easy. Because we don't have anything in our hearts, but we know that with like-minded persons, we can remember Krishna. That's why Prabhupada created this society, so that people from all walks of life, all kinds of different mentalities will have an opportunity at least to find persons of mutual interest, persons of mutual understanding. So when you put 10:9, Bodhayantaha Parasparam, and the purport of 329:17, it becomes very clear how we take association and what to do when we have taken association. This is very important point. So association actually also means friendship. Some people may think when I come to Krishna consciousness, I'll have no friendship. No, you will have friendship. But this friendship is friendship based on mutual interests. And what is our mutual interest? To serve Krishna. And in that way, our friendship will not be damaged. The moment we have an injection of material politics, material sense gratification, material motive, then our relationship will become spoiled. This is a very important point. See Ramchandra Puri. Ramchandra Puri, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri along with Ishwar Puri. But he was so critical of Vaishnava, starting with his own spiritual master. Can you beat that? And when his own spiritual master rejected him and told him to please leave at that time, he left. But he went to sit with all the other associates of Mahaprabhu. And when he was with them, if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll find every day he kept a file on each devotee. But the file was not glorification of the devotee. That file was all criticisms of the devotees. So he would appear to take sadhu sangha. But his purpose for sadhu sangha was to find fault. His purpose for sadhu sangha was, you see, you're not up to the mark. This was his purpose. And therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj tells us that eventually, he left the association of devotees. Why? Because of sense gratification. Subtly, he was criticizing, and that was very gratifying to his senses. Narada Muni in the 6th canto, in his previous life, was a Gandharva, if you remember. He was blessed with a great voice, but because he was constantly surrounded by maidens and people, who were praising him, sense gratification became the primary association at the center of that Sangha. And because of that sense gratification, at the time when he was supposed to glorify Krishna, he could not. And he sang songs which glorified himself. And the Devatas got so angry, they cursed him. And he fell down from his position. So it's very clear that when we don't take sadhu sangha, even when we have an opportunity to, we will take some other sangha. And that sangha will eventually cause us to fall from our devotional service. Ajamil was a devotee when he was young. And yet, a brief moment of sangha with a Shudrani and a Shudra embracing was enough for him to reject sadhu sangha. So these examples in Bhagavatam tells us that we should not take lightly the powerful forces of material nature. And that's why we must cultivate attachment to devotees. We cannot take lightly that we are strong against Maya. We are strong against material association. No. Devaki Mata herself feared Kamsa because Prabhupada says in the 10th canto that Kamsa represents material association, Asad Sangha. But she wanted Sadhu Sangha. So that's why she was very afraid of Kamsa. And that fear propelled her to take to take sadhu sangha. Of who? She took sadhu sangha of her husband Vasudev. In the jail, what were they doing? Maharaj told me in the jail they were bodhayantaha parasparam. They were experiencing great satisfaction and bliss, remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though they were in a prison. Why? Because they were giving each other sadhu sangha. Then you remember Kaikeyi in Ramayana. Kaikeyi was devoted to Lord Ram, even more so than Kaushalya Mata. And yet one day spent with Manthara was enough to poison her. There was no mutual interest. Her interest was the satisfaction of Lord Ram. Manthara's interest was the destruction of Lord Ram. But because she did not get that Swajati, the powerful association of Manthara corrupted the mind of Kaikeyi. So we cannot take devotee association for granted. Sometimes in Bhagavatam, devotees may even look like they are devotees. They may wear dhoti, tilak, kurta. Look at Indra in the 4th canto. Every time he came to steal the sacrificial horse from Prithu Maharaj, he came as a sannyasi. And that's what stopped Prithu Maharaj and everyone else from trying to hurt him. But because of that pretending to be a devotee, it was not good. He was not devotee actually, because his motives were sense gratificatory. But the dangerous part of it was because Prithu Maharaj and the Brahmanas and the sages were dwelling on the activities of Indra, they were actually unknowingly taking his asat sangha. And the result of that was, instead of remembering that the purpose of the fire sacrifice of Ashwamedha was to actually please Vishnu, the Brahmanas plotted to kill Indra, and even Prithu was ready to kill Indra. It took the intervention of a great devotee like Brahma, and Brahma gave them sadhu sangha and brought them to their senses and told them, what are you doing? You're supposed to be remembering Krishna here, not remembering some half past 6 sannyasi like Indra. You see? So this is a terrible effect, that when the goal of glorifying Krishna is not there, if bodhayantaha parasparam is not concentrated on katha yantascha mam nityam, eternal pastimes of Krishna, then we will be caught by Maya Devi. Maharaj told us, Chitraketu Maharaj took darshan of Lord Sankarshan, but later he offended he offended Lord Shiva. Why? Because he became a bit puffed up. And why was that so? Because after he took darshan of Lord Sankarshan, he was in the airplane. And during that airplane movement, he was moving around, but there was no sadhu sangha in the airplane. He was surrounded by all the beautiful and attractive ladies. And he lost the sadhu sangha for that moment. And because he lost it, right, when he saw Parvati sitting on the lap of Lord Shiva, knowingly or unknowingly, he spoke words which he should not have spoken. Brief moment, just that time. Just see the effect when we don't have proper devotee association. So therefore, without satam prasangan, what will happen is that anarthas will come now. And Prabhupada in one lecture, he took a lecture on the 2nd chapter, 11th verse. And he took it in 1975. I would remember reading it. Prabhupada says, anartha means unwanted bad habits. When we grow up, we associate with bad company. We also acquire bad habits. But to give up bad habits means we have to associate with sadhus or devotees, saintly persons. Then we can give it. That is why Bhagavatam is insisting in this verse that if we want satisfaction and bliss, if we want taste, rasayanaha, then we can only get it when these bad habits in our hearts go. And the only persons capable of washing away anartha, right, is actually the sadhus. Only sadhus can help us. Therefore, a very important point comes here. When we use the word associate, it actually means that we meet, or we not just meeting, not just staying with devotees. Sometimes we say, let's all get together now. Now we're all in this meeting. Yes, it is a meeting. But deeper than that is that when we meet each other, what should be our mood? That is the key for sadhu sangha. And Shastras tell us our mood should be 3 things. We should be receptive, we should be submissive, and we should be appreciative. Very important. if we are receptive of that devotee and what they are saying, if we are submissive to what they discuss about Krishna, and we are very appreciative of this katha that is coming, if we don't take the devotee for granted, then we are actually associating. Otherwise, what will happen is we will offend them. We will offend. So these three qualities are very important. And Prabhu's Mataji's, this is consistent in Bhagavatam also. It is. Look at the sages of Naimisharanya. Why did they turn to Sutta Goswami? They turned to Sutta Goswami because they said, Vetatvam saumya tatsarvam tadvatastat anugraha bhuyo snigdasya shishyasya guruvo bhuyamapi uta. They said that Sutta Goswami, please, you speak to us and tell us what you have scientifically learned about Bhagavatam. In other words, you talk about Katha now. Why do we want to hear you? Because you are submissive to your spiritual masters. And therefore, they have endowed you with all the blessings. Not only are you submissive, but you are actually very, very gentle. You are known as a gentle disciple. So when one is gentle in disposition, when one is friendly in disposition, when one is submissive to hear that what devotees are speaking about, then actually one takes good sadhu sangha. So this is one very important point. Look at Narada Muni. As a small boy, he was very receptive to what his mother was telling him. And mother was his first sadhu sangha, isn't it? Mother's sangha was so nice, because she gave him the sangha of the pure devotees. So he heard her. He was receptive. He was submissive. He was appreciative. And then after hearing her in this way, he then went to serve the sadhu sangha bhakti vedantas. And how was he with them? He was receptive. He was appreciative. And he was submissive. And because of that, his devotional service quickly grew. Amazing, quickly grew. It didn't stop actually. Then you see Chitraketu Maharaj. Chitraketu Maharaj could see Lord Sankarshan because after the devastation of losing his child, when Narada Muni came and then told him now that, are you prepared now to listen to me? He was appreciative, he was receptive, and he was submissive. And that is why he was initiated by Narada to see Sankarshan. Prabhupada says in a lecture that Ajamil, right, it took a moment association with the Vishnu Dutas at the point when Yamadutas were taking him away. That moment of conversation between Vishnu Dutas and Yamadutas was actually Sadhu Sangha. Think about it, huh? What were they doing actually? The Vishnu Dutas were discussing what religion is. And the Yamadutas were sharing with them what they had heard from another pure devotee, Yamaraj. So actually in front of Ajamil, Guru Maharaj told us that actually in front of Ajamil, Bodhayantaha Parasparam was going on. They were actually going on. And don't forget, Yamadutas may look frightening, but who do they serve? They serve a Mahajan. Therefore, they are also devotees. So Ajamil was going to die. He saw a frightening set of devotees, but then the nice looking set of devotees came and they both discussed Bhagavatam. Did the Vishnu Dutas and Yamadutas discuss what's on tomorrow in the movies? No, they didn't discuss that. They discussed what really is religion and who really is the supreme personality of Godhead. That's what they discussed. And who heard? Who became submissive? Who became receptive? And who became humble and appreciative? It was the repentant Ajamil. And in that sadhu sangha, just that moment, the brief conversation, they disappeared. But that awakened his dormant Krishna consciousness. See? Ritu listened to Brahma, isn't it? That is why instead of running after Indra, he just concentrated on pleasing Krishna. Because of sadhu sangha. He was receptive, he was submissive, and he was appreciative. Look at the great king Prataparudra in Chaitanya Leela. Prataparudra realized that he could not approach Mahaprabhu because Mahaprabhu directly could not be approached by the king because Mahaprabhu wanted to set a standard that kings are normally running after sense gratification. Why should sannyasi have anything to do with sense gratification? So no matter how much he wanted to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu did not see him. But he had sadhu sangha. Ramananda Rai first spoke on behalf of him to Mahaprabhu. and Mahaprabhu's heart softened a bit. Nityananda Prabhu himself, Adi Guru, right? He spoke on behalf of Prataparudra, and Mahaprabhu's heart melted a bit more. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya also spoke on behalf of Prataparudra, and Mahaprabhu's heart melted even more. And so finally, when Mahaprabhu actually gave mercy to Prataparudra by allowing him to massage his feet, that came on the basis of Prataparudra eagerly seeking out Sadhu Sangha. It came on the basis of Prataparudra being receptive to the blessings and taking association with the devotees. It came on the basis of Prataparudra having firm faith in the association of devotees. And that is why Mahaprabhu gave him darshan. And the last point I remember is Mrigari, the hunter. Prabhupada uses an interesting word when he describes the influence. Sorry, I used the word already. When Prabhupada describes the association, the greatness of association of Narada Muni on Mrigari, he uses the word here. He says, the story of Mrigari, right, becoming a devotee, is evidence of the great influence of Sadhu Sangha. See? So Sadhu Sangha may not be direct, but it is very influential. Just like bhakti, you have a seed that grows, Sadhu Sangha also plants a seed in the heart. And eventually that seed of Sadhu Sangha will fructify. Narada Muni gave brief Sadhu Sangha to Manigriva and Nalakuvera. And he prayed for them and gave them Sadhu Sangha. They were not very appreciative of him. Only after he cursed them, then they set up actually. The devotees are so kind that they don't care whether you appreciate them or not. But they always appreciate you and they always mean well to you. That is devotee. And so because Narada Muni prayed and gave Sadhu Sangha, the Sadhu Sangha seed was in the heart and it fructified when Krishna gave Nala, Kuvera and Manigriva darshan thousands of years later. So what is the commonality here amongst all these devotees who took Sadhu Sangha? They were eager to take Sangha. They were receptive when Sadhu Sangha was given. They were very appreciative and grateful. And they were very humble. That's why even in our friendship with each other, we should be receptive to each other. We should be eager to talk to Krishna, about Krishna to each other. We should be appreciative and grateful for each other's association. And we should be very humble. There should not be arguments. There should be always give and take. That is devotee. The result of this is actually satam prasangam. The result of this association will mean that eventually what will happen? We will become advanced on the path of liberation. And we will actually become fixed in our attraction to Krishna. We cannot become fixed in our attraction to Krishna until we get sadhu sangha. So what is the conclusion to today's wonderful verse actually? The first point, Prabhu's Mataji's, is that association is very powerful. That is one thing we must remember. I think it is nicely stated in 4th canto, 30th chapter, I think 34th, 35th verse. Tulayama lavenapi na swargam na punarbhavam bhagavat sangi sangasya matyanam kim muta shishaha. Even a moment's association with a pure devotee, you cannot compare it even to transferring yourself to heavenly planet. Even merging with Brahman effulgence is not comparable. And even for those who are going to die, association of devotees, even at that point, is the highest benediction. The highest benediction. So this is very important first point in the conclusion. The second point that's very important is that when you want to take association of each other in devotional service, then in the center there must be Krishna, but there must also be service. You must serve the sadhus. I think in the first canto, 2nd chapter, 16th verse, Shukadev Goswami declares this. Shushroshroho shraddhadanasya vasudeva katha ruchihi syanmahad sevaya vipraha punya tirtha nisevana. And it is declared in Bhagavatam that if you serve devotees who are completely freed from all vices. In other words, the pure devotees of the Lord. Great service is done. And if you perform that great service, then Rasayana, this very nice, important Rasayana Katha, then what will happen? We will gain ruchi. We will gain affinity to hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Sometimes after 20, 30 years in devotional service, the real challenge for all of us is, where's the taste? But the taste comes when we serve devotees. And how do you serve them? You serve them by associating. That is how we serve. So this is the next point that's very important. Of course, the third point is a question someone will ask, so I better answer it. Here it starts with the word pure devotee. And sometimes, we may ask ourselves, really? The person next to me is pure devotee? Really? Prabhupada is saying only pure devotee. Someone told me when they read this verse, Prabhu, this verse is now, obsolete. I said, why? Because there are no pure devotees. But when you speak to Prabhupada's disciples, when you speak to advanced devotees, they will always tell you that Prabhupada considered his devotees, his disciples, all pure devotees. Famously, our Guru Maharaj would always say, that someone asked Prabhupada, who is a pure devotee? And Prabhupada said, rascal, except for you, everyone else is pure devotee. So actually, purity is a very difficult to understand concept because we use material lenses to try and understand a spiritual concept. Srila Prabhupada gave a very nice conversation in Los Angeles in November of 1968. And this is how he explained purity. He says, we may not be 10% perfect, but as far as possible, if we follow the instructions as it is, that much is perfect. In this way, one will get perfection. So, one has to follow. The same example, try to understand, Prabhupada is saying. A perfect, expert technologist or technician or mechanic is working. Somebody is working under his instruction. So this somebody, because he is strictly working under the instruction of the expert, he is also expert. He may not be 10% expert, but his work is expert. What a nice point Prabhupada says. He may not be 10% expert, but his work is expert. Is that clear? Prabhupada is asking. Because he's working under the expert. Do you follow? Prabhupada is asking. So, now Prabhupada declares, if you follow pure devotee, then you are also pure. It may not be one is 10% pure, but because we are trying to raise ourselves from conditional life. So if we strictly follow the pure devotee, then we are also pure. So pure devotee, Prabhupada is saying, does not mean one has to become immediately 10% pure. But if he sticks to the principle that we'll follow a pure devotee, then his actions is as good as pure. Prabhupada ends by saying, it is not I am explaining in my own way. Nice point. He says it is the explanation of Bhagavata. This is such a nice point actually, Prabhupada. Therefore, anyone who's seriously trying sincerely to follow Srila Prabhupada, follow the teachings of their spiritual master, we should just take shelter of them. We should take the association, bodhayantaha parasparam, kathayantascha mam nityam. And that's how we should conduct our association. So we should not think and mix up material perfection with spiritual purity. They are different actually. It's a very important point actually. In Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami tells us how we should associate with each other. He says there are 6 items, of exchange of love that's very important, isn't it? Dadati pradigranati, guyam akyati prachati, bhumte bhojayati chaiva, sadviddham priti lakshanam. So offering gives in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence and inquiring confidentiality, accepting prasadam and offering prasadam. These are all important exchanges. Why? Because they cement friendship. So if I go to Swam Spurti Prabhu's house like I used to in Abu Dhabi, within 6 days, I would have put on at least 20 kg. Because Mataji won't let me go. There'll be so much prasadam, which by the way, I miss actually, since I've not gone to Abu Dhabi for a while. But if they come to our house, which they did, then we will also offer them nice prasadam. And we had a wonderful time together. In fact, our time was like that. We offered each other prasad. We offered each other gifts. So many gifts were there. Normally, when I came to Abu Dhabi, I'll come with a very small bag. When I used to go to Minneapolis, I think Balram Prabhu may be somewhere here. Balram Prabhu will always give me an extra bag because devotees shower you with love and gifts, so much gifts. Abu Dhabi, I can do prasadam distribution in Abu Dhabi airport. That's how much prasad I get for a 7-hour flight. And on top of all of that, we can all reveal to each other any pain, any challenges we have, any difficulties, any doubts. We can reveal minds to each other because we trust, we love, because we have Krishna in the center. So these 6 exchanges of love were never meant to be mechanical. They were meant to be from the heart, actually, from the heart. And one last point I think that's very important, is this idea that if you look at the next verse, 3:25-26, whoever's going to take that class, it's a beautiful verse. You'll realize that the conclusion that Kapila Dev says there is very important. 3:25-26 is the conclusion of 3:25-25. He says, if you take association of devotees, then what must we do? We must consciously engage in sadhu sangha. So therefore, taking association in a conscious way means to take it seriously. When you don't take association in a conscious way, that means you're doing it as a formality. We just have to come for programs. We just have to go. No. Just like we must be conscious of Krishna, we must always be conscious of devotees. It's so important, always to be conscious of devotees. So Guru is very important in Krishna consciousness. And we're all surrendered to Guru. But Maharaj told me, after my initiation, after 2-3 days of my second initiation in Dwarka, I said, Maharaj, now the perfection of my life is there because I have Guru. He said, yes, it's very important. But I have planted the seed. When you go back to Singapore, you must take association of the serious devotees there because they are the ones who will water the seeds. I cannot water the seed because I'm in Dwarka. You have to get sadhu sangha, and that regular watering is needed. And that is how our devotional service will grow. And therefore, to really conclude, we must remember what Narada Muni felt when he was a young boy. In 1.5.29 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni says a very important point as a young boy. He says actually that when I was young and I was serving the Bhakti Vedantas, I was very attached to the sages. This attachment is not material association. It is actually spiritual attachment. In other words, we are always eagerly seeking the association. Remember at the very start of our time together, we use the word that Prabhupada uses in the purport to seek. You can only seek sadhu sangha if you're attached to the concept, the principle, and you have faith. You're appreciative, you're reflective, and you're filled with gratitude. This is very important. And let us end today by remembering this one prayer. I asked Maharaj, how do I pray for devotee association? And Maharaj told me, you just have to remember 4, 9, 11 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Anytime we want association of devotees, remember 4, 9, 11. It is Dhruva Maharaj's famous prayer. Bhaktim muhu pravahatam tvayi me prasango bhuyat ananta mahatam amalasya shana yenanjasholba namuru vyasanam bhavad nesye bhavad gunakatha mritapana. The translation is very nice. O unlimited Lord, kindly bless me so that I may associate with great devotees who engage in your transcendental loving service constantly, as the waves of a river constantly flow. Such transcendental devotees are completely situated in an uncontaminated state of life. By the process of devotional service, I shall surely be able to cross the nascent ocean of material existence, which is filled with the waves of blazing fire-like dangers. It would be very easy for me, for I am becoming mad to hear about your transcendental qualities and pastimes, which are eternally existing. Why is Dhruva feeling madness? Why is he so eager? The shloka is 4, 9, 11. Why is he so eager? He's eager because he's now getting the association of the great devotees. And in the association of great devotees, it becomes very relishable to remember Krishna. Very important point. And Prabhupada says in his super excellent purport, it is very clear that unless one associates with devotees, his devotional service will not mature. When we do not associate with devotees, we cannot distinguish between our material activities and our spiritual activities. Very important. But when we start mixing with devotees, who are serious devotees, we will then be able to draw a line, and we will realize that our spiritual activities are very distinct from material, which is very important actually. So, devotional service in the association of devotees is the cause of the development for further devotional service. Very important. So, if we really want to mature our devotional service, then we can only grow it in the association of devotees. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Srila Gurudev ki, Nitai Gaura Prem. Thank you, Swayam Spruti Prabhu, for giving us an opportunity to take sadhu sangha from all the devotees.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for being with us. And Prabhu, if you have some time, can we have some questions, comments?
Sure. Few
So,
minutes is fine.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Dandavads.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for a
Yes,
wonderful
Prabhu.
sadhu association of all elevated devotees here and wonderful class. Prabhuji, you made one very wonderful point that we don't want association of mind, we want association of sadhu sangha. So mind is, Prabhuji, is there all the time, ingrained in the brain. So can you kindly elaborate how we can ensure that sadhu sangha is also like that, so that the mind is not affecting but sadhu sangha association is affecting? Kindly elaborate, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavad.
Nice question, Prabhu. The practical way to engage the mind is to have as many spiritual activities in our lives as possible that we can manage. We should have regular sadhu sangha association. Daily, for example, amongst the family members, we can all sit down and have bodhayantaha parasparam. We can chant, we can hear, and that is sadhu sangha. We should have association of devotees in our congregations. If we can't meet each other, we can always now get online. We can discuss Srila Prabhupada's books together. By doing these activities systematically, regularly, appreciatively, with our hearts, this sadhu sangha becomes very potent to ensure that the mind becomes regulated. Because you're right, mind is always with us. But the mind can become a friend, provided it is engaged in Krishna consciousness. And because Krishna consciousness is so pleasing, that eventually, even when the mind resists, because sadhu sangha is strong, the mind will become very subservient to intelligence. And intelligence becomes subservient to the needs of the soul. And that is how, Prabhu, we actually must manage our life in such a way that we are always eagerly seeking out sadhu sangha. It's very important. I hope that's useful, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavad. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavad Pranam. Beautiful class as always. Prabhuji, my question is regarding that Indra's example, what you gave, no? That there will be devotees who will be wearing tilak, dhoti, kurta and pretending to be devotee. Because we are all in the bodily platform. How will with our chakshu we will understand and analyze whether they are pure they are devotees of Krishna or are they pretending? How will we
Very nice.
gauge them?
I think the important thing here, Mataji, amongst other things, is actually the test. When you are with such devotees, are you able to remember Krishna? Are you peaceful and happy in your spiritual life? Are you having a taste for Krishna consciousness? Or in the presence of such devotees, are you becoming disturbed? If you're becoming disturbed, confused, bewildered, if the topics are moving slowly towards criticisms and finding fault, if the topics are becoming more material, then that devotee may not be of like-minded and mutual interests to help you in your devotional service. So the real test, is actually at that point of time. And up till then, we won't know actually. But we should keep an open mind and we should not judge anyone until we spend time with them. Is that helpful, Mataji?
Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna.
You were saying,
Dandavad.
when we have association, we should be conscious of the association. How we can practice it?
When we are in association, we should be conscious of the association. So your question, Mataji, is how to be conscious?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice point. It's the same question that we have, how are we conscious about Krishna? So we are conscious about Krishna when we try to remember his activities. So we become conscious of association when we don't take for granted the efforts and the great magnanimity and broad-heartedness that devotee is giving in giving us association. So whenever we express gratitude in our hearts to Krishna, that Krishna has sent devotees and that these devotees are helping us, then we become conscious of how wonderful is this association of devotees. So gratitude increases our consciousness, and consciousness will then become more appreciative of the devotees. I hope that's helpful, Mataji.
Yes. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
You?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, can you hear me, Prabhuji?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for your wonderful class. My pranams to you and all glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, I have got two questions, Prabhuji. My question number one is, our devotional service mainly focused on 4 spiritual activities. Number 1 is japa. Number 2 is kirtan. Number 3 is scriptures, reading Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Number 4 is satsanga, sadhu association. So which one you should be given the first priority? Is there is any order of preference? This is my first question, Prabhuji. My second question is,
Maybe I do the first question first, Prabhu. It's easier because my memory is short. Yeah. So the first question is, there are 4 principal activities in devotional service. Practice and experience will show us that our foundational sadhana bhakti is very important. But experience will also show us that all of this come very often together. For example, Prabhupada created the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And there we start the day by chanting or japa. We also have so many points of the day when we will sing kirtan and chant the holy names of the Lord in terms of glorification of Him. We also study the scriptures, and we do all this not alone. We do it in sadhu sangha. So each one of us must be spiritually responsible for our own sadhana, because chanting very often is done alone. And very seldom we have an opportunity, unless we stay in the temple, to be able to chant japa together. But even in chanting japa, if you have to be alone, you can chant, but always being conscious, that our chanting requires the blessings of the great devotees of the Lord. So it's twofold, Prabhu. One of it is that these activities will exist simultaneously with each other. It's very hard to say which is in order of preference. But when a devotee starts engaging in all these activities and puts them into perspective from a humility point of view, then you'll find that these activities find a common platform in sadhu sangha. Meaning to say, you can perform these activities with sadhu sangha and your devotional service will grow very quickly. So actually that would be a more realistic way of looking at our devotional service. Prabhupada also made a nice point in 1:15:50, the purport. He said that finally when we meet death, we are alone. And it's true. At that time, no matter how much sadhu sangha we have to face death alone. But Prabhupada likens it, to this example of flying an airplane. Finally, when we are flying the airplane, we are alone. Just you and the airplane. Of course, you have passengers behind, but you have to fly it. Nobody else can fly it for you. But on the ground, so many people have taught you so many things. So that finally, when you have to fly, all their sadhu sangha has become very helpful. So I hope this explanation gives you a better idea of how we can harmoniously blend these activities.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. In fact, the one it comes to my mind now, as you explained, Prabhuji, this is very good actually. As you said, the japa, kirtan, and reading scriptures, it can be done either alone or in the association. So if it is done, all these 3 activities in association with the devotees, we can call it as a satsanga. It's a really wonderful expression, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And my another question is, sorry, I'm taking more time
It's
for me. The family we maintain is created by Maya. Okay, our family relationships also changes. Sometimes we born in animal platform. Sometimes we are born in a human life. Okay, since we born in the human life, we have, even in animal life also, we have the family, we have the friends, relatives, societies, as they are so called. They're all called asset because they are all temporary and created by Maya. But still we need to discharge our duties as a responsible, as a human, family person, so for such temporary relationships, which we call as a sangha. So in this case, we have to have as a sangha and satsanga also. How to have a clear borderline so that we perform in both these activities.
good point. Prabhu, first of all, what's very important is this. When we read our sastras very carefully, we will realize actually that our family to whom we are born, our children, our fathers, our mothers, they are not products of Maya. They are actually given to us by Krishna. It is Krishna's arrangement through the arrangement of the material energy that we come together as families. And there's always a reason for it because of our past previous activities. So, one very important thing for devotees is to actually have this congenial attitude to whoever we are born and whoever we meet. Because if we have the attitude that they are Maya and Asat Sangha, what will happen is we will start associating with a bit of subtle pride. Because we are devotees and they are Asat Sangha. And that is not the thrust of Bhagavatam actually. The whole thrust of Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada has said this many times, that whoever has been given to Krishna, given to us by Krishna, it is given by Krishna. A devotee grows in devotional service when he doesn't see the members of his family who are not devotees as on the other side of the fence, but rather he sees them, first of all, expressing gratitude that he has come into this world through his father and mother. And that even if they may not be Krishna conscious, don't forget, once upon a time, we were also just like them. But some kind soul took us away from that and brought us to Krishna consciousness. And let us not forget that in every living entity, there is the seed of devotional service. It is dormant. So every single living entity, Prabhu, is a potential devotee. And that includes the family members. The moment you put on that lens from the lens of Bhagavatam, then the way we act with them, the way we behave with them will not be filled with acrimony. It will also prevent us from becoming falsely proud. It will prevent us from finding fault with them and criticizing them. Because we must not forget what Bhagavatam tells us, that different living entities have different mentalities. It is not our business to either praise them or blaspheme them. But our prayer to everyone, especially our family members who may not be devotees, is that someday they will become devotees. And in that mood of congeniality, we should continue our devotional service. If they are inspired by our devotional service, they may come. If they are not, we should adjust practically in such a way that we don't become a disturbance to society, because that's what Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita. Devotees are never disturbances to society. So a devotee should work in such a way that he becomes the gardener of his little plot of land. He doesn't speak, he doesn't say anything about Krishna consciousness because they may not be prepared to hear. But his behavior should be so sublime, and he should be giving such nice, wonderful sadhu sangha that eventually either the non-devotees in the family gain respect for what he does and leaves him alone, or they develop nice relationship with him. I remember when I approached my Guru Maharaj very early on, when I met him first time, the first thing he warned me is, the greatest snare of Maya is to think your family is Maya. Your family has been sent to you by Krishna. And everyone who's sent by Krishna is a source and opportunity for service. Serve them, be loving to them, show them the greatness of the devotee. And in that way, you will become very peaceful. And eventually, no matter how many challenges there may be, they will also become peaceful. Is that helpful, Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Sadashiv Prabhu.
Prabhuji, this one point which is coming to.
Can't hear you so well, Prabhu.
Can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear me now?
I can hear you.
So actually, this about Sadhu Sangha, this verse is speaking so much, and you explained us so many deep points. And one thing which is coming to my tiny mind is when we devotees are struggling devotees, many of us, and especially me. And in the struggling stage, we are attracted towards Sadhu Sangha. At the same time, we are attracted towards sense gratification and indriya tripti. So how, and that is not good. We realize that it's not good. But how practically we can get over this phase that we reduce our attraction to sense gratification, and we go towards more sadhu sangha and get over it.
Well, you've asked $1 million question, Prabhu. That's the question that all of us are asking, actually. But the nice point, that sadhus that Bhagavatam tells us is very important. Bhagavatam tells us that the challenge of material sense gratification will never go away. And we don't expect it to go away overnight. But we should be patient, enthusiastic, and confident in our devotional service. It is not in our capacity to remove sense gratification because we are very fallen. But when we take association of devotees who you can sense have the taste for Krishna consciousness, and you put faith there and become receptive and submissive and appreciative of them, and you increase gradually that association and decrease gradually sense gratification, then the verdict of Bhagavatam is that that service you do for devotees and Krishna will give you a higher taste. It will come. It will come. But till then, we should not be morose. We should be patient. We should be confident. And we should continue everything with enthusiasm. Otherwise, what will happen is the mind will tell you every day, oh, I'm caught in sense gratification, I'm caught in sense gratification. That is another snare of the mind. Because the mind wants you to always worry about sense gratification, and inevitably you remember sense gratification. So instead of worrying so much, better when we are in the Krishna consciousness, enjoy it. Very important. 1133 of Bhagavatam, that 1133 of Bhagavad Gita, what does Krishna say? Uttishta tishtatvam, isn't it? He tells him to wake up, get up, and enjoy your kingdom. We should enjoy what we are doing in devotional service. Then we will get a higher taste. So actually, when we are in devotional service and morose because we're thinking of sense gratification, then we are going to be caught. But when we are in devotional service, everyone should smile. Everyone turn on your cameras and all should smile. I'm joking, you don't have to. But I'm saying that is the test of devotional service. Don't be too worried about sense gratification. It has been an enemy of this body, of this soul, for millions of years. We cannot reasonably expect that it'll go away. But instead of wasting time on that, let's look at other things. We have nice prasadam, we have nice deities of Krishna, we have nice sadhu sangha. We, at least in this lifetime, we know who Krishna is. How wonderful is that? How wonderful is that? Does that help, Sadashiv Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you, Prabhuji. One more point. Sorry. This is you spoke about Manogatan in the class, and then we have been talking to each other when it's the Bodhyantam Parasparam, that I had this relation, I had that relation, we shared that relation. And sometimes it comes to my mind whether it was a realization or it is a Manogatan. So how should I make sure it is whatever I'm speaking is a realization or it's not a Manogatan?
It will be a realization if it actually can be put into practice and increases your devotional service. If it cannot be put into practice and it cannot increase our devotional service, then it is concoction. It must also find some reference to Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada, our acharyas. Then it is solidly grounded. That is how we determine and assess realization. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu. Thank you for nice class, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Prabhu, if you give some tips, Prabhu, just to how quickly get identify the Vaishnava Aparadhas, because that is what are the tips to that I have committed some Vaishnava Aparadhas. Why I will how we can understand that I have did some Vaishnava Aparadhas.
The best way to understand that if we have committed Vaishnava aparadha is two ways. Our sadhana will start declining. Our taste for Krishna consciousness will also drop. We will become more critical and find fault with devotees. When we see this too, Prabhu, we know that there is already aparadha. Very, very important.
And second part, Prabhu, then what is the next action? How to identify why I have committed to which Vaishnava and what to do for that?
Actually, frankly speaking, Prabhu, we should reveal our mind, to a Vaishnava when we think we are offending. We will know actually when we have said things we should not say. Just like, a child knows, when he has done something wrong, but he pretends, no, I did not do anything wrong. But in the heart, we know. So we have to be more open in our heart to understand that we should not be finding fault with devotees. We will know. Just like Prabhupada said, only the person eating will know whether they are satisfied or not, or whether food is good or not. So only the person criticizing will actually know whether they are criticizing or not. No one can say, oh, Prabhu, I didn't know I did aparad. They know in their heart. They have to accept it. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
So happy to see you, Prabhu. I think I can take one last question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just have one question. So, like we were talking about devotee association and everything, but we know from the Shastras that the Paramatma actually like stays with us throughout in all our life forms. And then also we are involved in deity worship. So how do we, is it wrong to desire to foster a personal, unique relationship with Krishna? And how do we fit it within the framework of devotee association and being attached to devotees? Is it wrong to desire to foster that individual personal relationship with the Lord, either through the deity form or like through Paramatma?
Very nice question. The good news is, Prabhu, Shastras declare that we each have a unique relationship with Krishna. Shastras declare that because we are all individual living entities. So our relationship with Krishna will always be individual. It will always be unique. That's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. So you are more than welcome to develop your own loving personal relationship with Krishna, but always based on Shastric references and Shastric guidance. But that relationship will always be yours. No one can take it, no one can reclaim it, no one can even claim to have it. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Swami Shruti Prabhu, and all devotees.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Have a wonderful Kartik month.
Yes. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Devakinandan Prabhu, thank you. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai.
So, Prabhuji, just your wonderful class. So I just requesting. I have one request that you have given so nice class on the association of the sadhu, and you are also great sadhu. So my request is that frequently you can come and whenever time permit and give us association. So your association is very much valuable for us.
And the same feeling is from me, Prabhu. That's why Sadhu Sangha is needed. And today I'm so happy. Because of this Sadhu Sangha, I could spend so much time reading the verse, so much time reflecting on it. This would not have happened if not for this Sadhu Sangha. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
And Prabhu, just one thing, one
Yes.
takeaway from your class, which I have written on the top of my notes, that association of devotees makes one smiler. Maharaj used to ask me to smile, but Maharaj never told me the secret is smiling. So thank you very much, Prabhu, for telling us the secret is smile. And I really appreciate it. And this has got a meaning in it. So thank you so much, Prabhu, for your wonderful association.
Thank you.
And thank you, Devakinandan Prabhu, for organizing the program.
Yeah,
Hare Krishna.
thank you. The beauty of these online things is now I don't have to get on a plane and come back, you see. I'm just here. So thank you.
Thank you.
All blessings. Gurudev.
But Prabhuji, we are missing to serve you. Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.